Mercedes Mone, Sasha Banks, that star from Star Wars. Call her whatever you want, but she is a big deal. I mean, there's a reason that AEW decided to keep cutting to her during the All In event, because they know it would cause a stir online, and they could go, that's right, she's come to our massive show, what could it possibly mean? So I presume there has to be at least some kind of working agreement in place, otherwise this was totally mad. So as we always say, you're a nerd, I'm a nerd, everybody's a nerd. So let's try and figure out how the former Sasha Banks could debut in All Elite Wrestling. Now, if we do go back to that pay-per-view, I presume that if she does come in, she has to go after Julia Hart. This is one of the more surreal moments. During that House of Black versus the Acclaimed Trios match, every time Hart did pop up on the screen, we had come back to Mercedes Mone. You know what? Why the flub not? Although I suppose it could have been an accident or a clue. Let's try and find out.
Well, turns out putting a pipe in your mouth, getting a magnifying glass, and wearing a detective hat doesn't actually make you a detective. There's nothing in it.
So that was a waste of time, but yes, going back to what I just did hint at, I think we should flab and do it. Because there are, of course, much bigger matches for Mercedes to go after, but depending on what her deal says and how many of the grapples we can get out of her, do you know how beneficial it would be for somebody like Mone to work with Julia Hart? Well, I'll tell you, very beneficial. Let's not forget how important that is when we are talking about the growth of our performers. So if you can get Mercedes through the door, and she has a match with Julia Hart on Dynamite, fine, awesome, wicked, as the kids say. Of course, Mone would win that one, but she can take all of this experience and give it to Julia, plus this will be going on behind the scenes too. I think that's a flubbing great idea. It also means she can do a kind of middle match before we get to the big guns, and look, when we get to that juncture, no ifs, no buts, no maybes. I cannot stand when people go, well, we can't do this straight away, we have to wait. Why do we have to wait? You can get hit by a bus tomorrow, and then you'd be super pissed off, so let's just pull the trigger and bring in Britt Baker. Because when you do go through that AEW women's roster, I do still think she's at the tippity top of the tree, and given that All Elite Wrestling has become basically a dream match factory, well, let's get back to work and produce another one. I am also an expectant fan, like we all are, so like Dave Bautista, just give me what I want, and I would actually use the CM Punk method. So Britt Baker does come out and she just goes hint, 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 wink, wink, nudge, nudge, but she never actually tells you directly. We all then get excited and warm and fuzzy in our tum-tums, so when it does happen, you just get this explosion of joy. That sounded terrible. When wrestling does this right as well, it's so damn good because we all feel like we're a part of the secret club. Because we know they don't know, but of course we do know. And even though they know we know, we're going to pretend that we don't know. And that doesn't make any sense. It's like 2 + 2 = potato. But again, maths and vegetables, we're going to have a good time. So let's just get to a pay-per-view, say something like Full Gear. That will do, because I think by then Mercedes will be over her injury. Baker comes to the ring and she's all like, right, let's see if what we think is going to happen is going to happen. Then Mercedes Mone's name comes up on the big screen. She gets a monster reaction. And then in seconds, you're getting Mercedes versus Britt Baker. So you could just plug this straight in. And as much as I like Baker too, she would have to lose, although we should absolutely revisit it down the line. And straight after that, when you get to the next episode of Dynamite, Mercedes is back. And she goes, way ho, thank you, ma'am. I'm now going for the title shot. I've already told you, why are we standing on ceremony, Mr. Wayne? I mean, if Saraya is still the champion by this stage, that story writes itself, because if we do go back to the WWE, they had that incident that made the former Paige retire. Now, we should only do this if both human beings are happy, but even if you don't want to, they have so much history. And in 2023, do you know what human beings love? Nostalgia. I see no reason why you can't have Mercedes be victorious here and give her the belt as well, because why would you bring her in? I mean, obviously to make the fans happy, but also to grow the business and increase the rating. So if all of a sudden fans hear, wait a minute, Sasha Banks is now the AEW Women's Champion, I better tune in. So she should be in the most profitable position. And also, look at all the damn matches we can do. Mone versus Shida, Mone versus Toni Storm, Mone versus Willow Nightingale that also has history, Mone versus Chris Statlander, Mone versus Thunder Rosa. Now, once again, it is all going to depend on the contract that Mercedes may or may not sign. We have no idea. But ultimately, when she does leave, everybody should cross their arms and go, wow, look at this women's division, we shone a bigger spotlight on it, and it's done everybody the world of good. And if you do this, and it is a massive success as well, when you get to the end of that contract, there is every chance that Mercedes goes, oh, well, I like it here in AEW. It feels like I'm having a good time. Plus, I have the freedom to still pursue my acting, which I can only imagine she does want to do. Give me another piece of paper, and I'll do a few more matches. I mean, it is a slight gamble, I suppose. But if we go back to her time in WWE, it kind of feels like she was never valued properly. I mean, look at all of her WWE title runs. So if all of a sudden somebody is going, oh, Mercedes, we think you're the best, well, I've said it once, I'll say it twice, make her feel warm and fuzzy in the tum-tum and happy in the tootsie toes. So let's just do all of this in All Elite Wrestling, and I guarantee you she will swim. I mean, look what happened when she signed with New Japan Pro Wrestling. She had great match after great match after great match, and when you get into the metrics and statistics, which is what the internet likes to do, all the numbers went up. And in terms of running a business, this is exactly what you want and what you want people to do. I mean, she could actually be the catalyst for change for all the criticisms that people do have towards the AEW women's division. And look, we can keep throwing out names. We didn't even mention Mercedes Mone versus Ruby Soho. I also like this idea of Mone potentially starting her own group as she does try to protect her championship, because stables are just flying in pro wrestling right now, and it would also help the rest of the people on the roster. For example, if you stick a Sky Blue with her, or an Anna Jay, or a Penelope Ford, or a returning Red Velvet, they are only going to be able to learn from her tree. I don't really know what that means, but she does have a ton of experience. She can pass it around. I mean, of course they're going to benefit from this. I'd be amazed if they didn't. Kind of like the Inner Circle in 2019, but in reverse. You also have the likes of Athena and Riho, who would also light it up with Mercedes. If we just break it down to brass taxes, all of this gets me very excited. That's why we tune into wrestling, to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it, and to have a good old fun time. It also opens up a bunch of other doors, because do not forget we have the TBS title. And look what Orange Cassidy did with the International Championship recently. You want to take all the star power that Mone does have and put that towards the technically secondary title. By the end of it, you could have elevated that, and you know what it helps overall? Say it with me, let's be friends, the AEW Women's Division. I mean, now it's getting boring. If you do this well too when she does leave, the foundations and the structure will be in a much better place. And she is an asset. Some people like to go on that there Twitter or X and go, oh man, she's vastly overrated. Is she? I don't think she is. And I would bet my last dollar that she hadn't got injured, she'd already be in AEW. And I could only imagine now she does have a return date, which is why once again we saw her at All In. And I would be super pumped if this did go down, because I think it would be one of the biggest signings that AEW has ever made. I don't like to throw words around, all hyperbole-like. It's not true, I do like doing that. But I would call it transformative. That's right. It's come out of my mouth. Now, well, I can't retract it. So I think we should just go and get it done, and I think we should go big guns from the start of all this, and then we can assess in 6 months' time. I think this will be good for everyone. Let's keep fingers crossed that it actually happens. Now, of course, the most important part of this video is that you go into the comments below and let me know what you think about Mercedes Mone signing with AEW. Is she going to do it? Or are we going to go back to that London event and say, what the flub was that about? Also, please do like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Click the video that's on the screen right now to hear me rant about something else going down in wrestling. We will keep you up to date with any AEW signings at whatculture.com. And of course, we're on social media. So if you want to come call me a goober, you absolutely can. My name is Simon for What Culture. Thank you very much for watching me as always. And for all those crazy that go, Simon, Mercedes Mone is never going to debut in AEW. But even if she doesn't, do not forget that some of the fun of being a fan is speculating and fantasy booking. Just don't get super duper aggressive with it, and always be respectful to other people's opinions. Unless, of course, you say that Miro should never be the world champion. If they're your thoughts, you can get out of my house, and I'm not going to give you a cup of tea or a sandwich. Goodbye.